Hi, my name is Lyra Jenkins, and this is my life. I know I'm only 17, and there's probably not much to tell of my life, but I guess I'd share it anyway. Love can take you a long way. Everyone falls in love at some point, and it usually depends on how long it takes them and how they manage it. As for some, when they do fall, they fall hard, and by the end of it, they get hurt really bad. I came into this world unexpectedly. Mom always told me I was a gift, a special gift, but I never felt that way. Mostly because I was abandoned by my very own mother, given away for adoption as an infant. My mother was a normal human being, but my father, well, he's a vampire. I know that's pretty hard to believe, but my mother is convinced it's true. And I've never met him, but Mom has told me about my father a couple of times. There's this saying, it's called love at first sight, and I suppose that's what happened between my parents. My mother was just 17 and my father 18. According to my adopted mother, she told me that they first met in high school. You could say it was a typical love story meeting between the two of them. My mom crashed into Dad, spilling coffee all over his newly ironed shirt. And I guess that's where it all started. A beautiful beginning with a tragic ending. To my mother, my father was the sweetest guy she had ever met. He would buy her flowers and hold her hand, and he would give her all his hours when he had the chance. She always dreamed of having a guy like him, but she never thought of the pain and suffering he would cause her. I have no clue if the love between them was even real. All I know is that they went a little crazy and wild. And when he found out that Mom was pregnant with me, he turned his back against her and he left. And never returned since. My mother was only 19 at that time, and back in those days, being pregnant as a teenager was difficult. Financially, physically, emotionally, you name it. And I guess my mother couldn't bear the pain of abortion and putting an end to an innocent life. So she decided to keep the child, but when she gave birth to me, she gave me away for adoption. So I never got to see my real mother again, and I'm so very grateful for my adopted mother for her enduring and unconditional love. Yet I still feel this emptiness in my chest somehow, that just somehow can't be filled. I had always thought of myself to be a happy child. I had a decent childhood, had tons of friends, and had a lot of fun. It wasn't until my 12th birthday that I uncovered a dark secret that had been kept away from me all these years. It was one of those usual dinner birthday parties. The cake, the presents, the friends, everyone was happy. So was I. Okay, yeah, I know I spelled birthday wrong. The guy who designed my banner had spelling issues. Everything seemed to be going smoothly when I suddenly felt really sick, and then I threw up in front of everyone. My body suddenly felt so hot and sick, I felt like I was having a fever. I felt like all my energy had been drained out. Everyone was grossed out, of course, and 5 minutes later everyone left. I would have been so embarrassed, but what happened? I didn't have the energy to feel embarrassed. A while later, I couldn't take the heat and pain anymore and passed out. I finally woke up late at night in my bedroom, and I could remember that my head hurt really badly. My mother was fast asleep beside my bed, and I could tell that she was worried. My head hurt so bad I couldn't fall asleep, so I decided to have a drink in the kitchen. Something caught my eye when I went to the kitchen. There, on the kitchen table, lay a lab report, and it had my name on it. A curious girl as I was, I read the report, and something else caught my eye. Something that would change my life forever. The report said HIV positive. Wait, what? The lab report was released almost 7 years ago? Did that mean I was born with HIV? Why did my mother keep this from me? For a 12-year-old, it came as a pretty big shock. Then I started to remember all the medication I had to take since I was a kid. I always thought I had asthma, heart problems, or something. I just never imagined that I would be HIV positive. I couldn't sleep the entire night. This whole HIV thing was just bugging me a lot. I just couldn't believe it. I asked my mom about the HIV thing, and she told me the whole truth. I had been HIV positive since I was born. I can't really remember what had happened after she told me. I just knew that I started crying non-stop. I had just learned about HIV in school. I knew that there was no cure and it would ultimately cause death. At that moment, I was really scared. Was I going to die? Where do people go after they die? Questions about that just flooded my mind.
pain. Sometimes, I just wish I could be the one taking all her pain instead. I would give my life for her. At the age of 28, I was diagnosed that I couldn't conceive. As a woman, it was such a terrible thing. I was disappointed and frustrated. About a year later, I met a close friend's teenage daughter who had just given birth and was looking for someone to adopt her baby. When I saw young and beautiful Lyra sleeping so soundly, I just couldn't take my eyes off her. And soon enough, the adoption papers were signed, and beautiful Lyra became my family. But little did I know that a huge secret was hidden away from me. Lyra had been falling sick very often since she turned 5. Her fevers lasted for weeks, and she had swollen lymph nodes on her neck. I thought something wasn't right, so I brought her to the hospital for a full body checkup. It turned out that Lyra was HIV positive. It was such a shock. How could this happen? Everything was going so well since we were together. What did she do wrong to deserve this? She's just an innocent girl who wants a happy childhood. We went from doctor to doctor, traveling across the country to find hospitals which had the best treatment and perhaps even a cure for the HIV virus. But to no avail, Lyra still kept getting sick. However, as the years come by, I figured out that there's nothing I could do about it. I accepted the truth. I still love her. She's still my one and only daughter. I decided not to tell Lyra about her condition, as I thought she was too young to understand. But I guess I waited too long.
What is HIV? What is AIDS? What is the difference? I never used to care about all these things. It had nothing to do with me. But after I found out I was HIV positive, all these questions just started to flood my mind. Well, HIV, or human immunodeficiency virus, is a virus that attacks the T cells in the immune system. AIDS is a medical condition, the syndrome which appears in advanced stages of HIV infection, also known as acquired immune deficiency syndrome or acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. HIV and AIDS are completely different from each other, mind you. People with HIV have what is called HIV infection. As a result, some will then develop AIDS. The illness destroys your immune system, making you much more vulnerable to infections and diseases. And it just gets worse and worse. The disease would kill you slowly until your death. It is possible to be infected with HIV without developing AIDS. However, if left untreated, the HIV infection would progress and eventually develop into AIDS. HIV can be caused by many things, from injection with contaminated needles, blood transfusion, and transfer of the virus from mother to baby during pregnancy, birth, or breastfeeding. But it's mainly caused through unprotected sex. And how does HIV affect the body? HIV is a retrovirus, which means that its genetic material is RNA and not DNA. First, the virus enters the T helper lymphocytes, a type of white blood cell that plays a large role in helping our bodies to fight diseases in our immune systems. Once inside the host cell, the viral RNA is converted back to DNA to be incorporated into human chromosomes. Then the virus uses the T helper cells to replicate itself, and they leave, killing cells in the process. This process goes on until the T cell count of an individual drops so low that the immune system stops working, making you susceptible to many infections. It can take about 10 years before this can develop into AIDS. Oops, sorry for all the scientific stuff, but hope you understood. Sadly, there's no cure for HIV or AIDS, but there are lots of drugs that can be used in combination of ways to control the virus. Each of these classes of anti-HIV drugs blocks the virus in different ways. Some of these drugs include non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, NNRTIs. These disable a protein needed by HIV to make copies of itself. Nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, NRTIs. NRTIs are faulty versions of building blocks that HIV needs to make copies of itself. Protease inhibitors, PIs. PIs disable protease, another protein that HIV needs to make copies of itself. entry of fusion inhibitors. These drugs, they just block HIV's entry into T cells. And finally, integrase inhibitors. These works by disabling integrase, a protein that HIV uses to insert its genetic material into T helper cells. When I went back to school, I didn't really want to tell anyone about my HIV. So I didn't. Well, almost. Maybe. Okay, well, I told my best friend about it because it was just so overwhelming I couldn't keep it to myself. I made her swear to secrecy and gullibly believed that she would not tell anyone. Soon the whole school was buzzing with the news that I was HIV positive, and that was only the start. Nobody would even come near me in fear of catching my so-called disease. Classmates would call me horrible names on social media. Parents would come and yell at me, telling me to leave the school to prevent their kid from catching HIV. I even received death threats, and people were saying that I shouldn't even have been born. I was almost run over by a car once. It was a hit and run, so I didn't know who it was, but my mom suspected that it was one of the neighbors. I was like a poisonous fruit. No one ever wanted to come near me. It was like I had a huge board that said, "I'm HIV positive. Stay away from me. Go away." And for a 12-year-old, it was pretty hard. I found myself sitting in a corner, isolated all the time. I didn't know why nobody wanted to go near me. It's not like HIV is contagious. My life before I found out I had HIV, the friends, the hangouts, the laughter, they were all gone and replaced with days of sadness, fear and isolation. I dreaded coming to school every day because that just meant another day of torture. My grades dropped drastically as I couldn't concentrate anymore. So what if I have the virus? Does that make me unworthy of making friends and doing things every other child could do? What crime had I committed to be treated like this? Those were the most painful times of my life. I was just so lonely and hurt. I felt like I didn't belong in this world. I constantly thought of ending this torturous life of mine, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Death was my biggest fear. The bullying in school was only the tip of the iceberg. I remember feeling weaker and weaker each day. The medications were not working and I kept getting sick. I was so sick that I had to stop school and stay home as I was just too sick. Soon enough, when I was 14, my doctor told me that my HIV infection had developed into AIDS, and that I had only a very short time to live. That day was the worst day of my life. Do you know that feeling when something terrible happens and you feel like a huge rock just fell on you and crushed you to pieces? Yeah, that was how I felt. How could this be? I still want to live, to graduate, to get a degree, get a job, travel the world, get married, and have kids. I still had so many dreams and ambitions that have yet to be fulfilled. You can't just let me die like that. This is so unfair. When I started high school, I decided to keep to myself and not tell anyone about my HIV. I didn't want the same thing to happen again. So I was pretty much a loner for most of the time. I couldn't really make a lot of friends because I wasn't allowed to join any activities or sports in fear that I could get sick again. The doctor said that many people with AIDS may have the opportunistic infections like pneumonia, TB, or even cancer. But I guess my mom didn't want to risk it. However, gossip travels faster than fire, and soon the whole school knew that I had AIDS, and I was once again back to square one. The bullying and name-calling started again. Nobody dared to touch me, and you know the rest. Music was my only solace. Headphones in, the world out. Now I could escape from the harshness of the world. Music was the only thing that kept me from insanity. I would spend days locked in my room, just listening to music. As days went by, I started getting thinner and thinner. I didn't know why. I guess I do eat moderately, but some days I just don't have the appetite. I went from a size 6 to a size 4. By my 16th birthday, I was nearing a size 2. This whole AIDS thing was just killing me inside out. Once again, suicidal thoughts filled my head. Every day was a pain. It wasn't until a classmate named Lily started talking to me and treating me like a real friend. Suddenly I felt like I was normal again. Nothing about HIV or AIDS bothered. It was amazing. She didn't care that I have HIV and AIDS. She invited me over for hangouts, play rehearsals, and I managed to do so many things that I didn't know I could do. Boy, you don't know how much a good friend like that could change your life. Lily suggested that I do something to tell people more about HIV and AIDS.
so that people would understand more about my condition, and perhaps I could raise some awareness to help others who are suffering from HIV or AIDS too. I did some research and I was shocked to find out how widespread HIV was. There was so much about HIV and AIDS that I had yet to know. 70% of the world's deaths occur in Africa. In 2007, it was estimated that 15 million people had already died of HIV and AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa. 14.8 million children are estimated to have lost one or both parents to AIDS. The average life expectancy in South Africa had dropped 10 years from 65 to 55 in 1990s. I realized that there are so many people around the world, especially in Africa, who are like me, born with AIDS, but they have no access to any treatment, and therefore many of them die at a young age. I suddenly realized that I am really lucky to go to hospitals and receive treatment for my condition, when there are millions out there who just do not have an opportunity for healthcare at all. So Lily and I decided to create a video about HIV and AIDS and talked about the current situation in Africa. We posted it on our school website, hoping people would have a better understanding about HIV and asking for volunteers to help in fundraising projects for proper healthcare in Africa. And it was a success. Many who watched the video had their eyes open to what HIV is really about. Soon we had a huge group of volunteers and we managed to raise quite an amount. Well, I guess there's a reason to why everything happens, but we just have to make do with our situation and make the best of it. Hi, my name is Lyra Jenkins and I have AIDS, but that doesn't matter. And though my journey may not be a long one, I will live my life to the fullest and do the best I can to help those with HIV and AIDS. Won't you help too?